Welcome back, folks. Kendall here with Manolos, Pros, and Joes. And in today's video, we're going to begin to answer the question, should you remodel your bathroom? And the first piece of criteria that we're going to discuss today is going to be the factor of time. Now, there's a lot of different factors that we need to discuss and consider before we decide that we're going to go ahead and move forward with doing a bathroom renovation or a remodel or upgrade. But the first thing we have to determine is time. And the amount of time that it's going to take you to prepare, as well as the amount of time that it's going to take you to be actively involved in that renovation, is going to vary depending on your scope of work. But regardless of whether or not you're going to be doing your project DIY, or you're going to be working with a contractor, designer, etc., you're still most likely going to have some level of involvement with that project, which is going to require your time. And so the first way that time typically becomes involved in the project is going to be, number one, deciding whether or not you're going to be doing the work yourself or if you're going to be working with a contractor. If you're going to be working with a contractor, one of the first things you have to do is take time to do research. That research is probably going to begin with some online research. You're probably going to be calling friends and family and coworkers. And then once you've got those initial recommendations, both from people that you know as well as the internet, then it's up to you to begin calling and emailing and reaching out to them to try to get a better feel for your level of comfort with each of those. Once you've whittled that list down even further, now it's time to begin to do site visits and things like that. That's going to take even more of your time to do that. Then you're going to have to review bids. That's even more of your time to do that. Now, if you're going to be working with someone who's going to be doing that project turnkey, or if you're going to be working with a designer, you may have less time involved with things like material selection, but more likely than not, it's still going to require you to make decisions. And some of those materials that you're going to be selecting, like countertops and things like that, particularly if you're going to be going with natural stones and things like that, you're going to have to or want to go and see those things in person. And so that's going to take even more of your time. And so when we're just even talking about just purely selecting of a contractor and making material selections, you've already got a considerable amount of time that's going to be tied up in this project. Now, another thing that you also may want to consider is going to be how deeply involved you're going to get with the project. Now, some people are going to turn over the project 100% over to a contractor and just get out of the way and say, have at it. Other people are going to want to have some type of role in the process, be that demolition, or maybe they want to do some paint work. Regardless of what level of involvement you choose, that's going to require time. And so you also factor that in mind. Another thing that you also want to be considering is materials, because if you're going to be doing a bathroom renovation, even if it's going to be minor, you're still going to have to be able to go in and make selections on things like paint. You're going to have to pick out fixtures and things like that. If you're going to be replacing the toilet, you got to deal with that, a vanity, etc., 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 light fixtures. All these things are going to take time. As I said, unless you're going to turn all these decisions over to someone else, you're going to have to be the one to take the time to look at those things. And as you're considering making selections for materials, another thing you also have to consider is if you're going to be willing to turn that over to someone else to make all the final calls, then you're essentially going to have to be okay with whatever those final decisions are and kind of just roll with the punches. Now, another thing that you also have to consider when you're talking about making time or having time for a bathroom renovation is going to be how the contractors are going to access that property. Because normally that work is going to be conducted during normal business hours, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, 7 to 5, 7 to 6, something along those lines, Monday through Friday, depending on what you guys negotiate and work out. However, they're going to have access to that home to be able to do the work. And are you going to be comfortable with allowing a contractor and subcontractors to have free run of your house? Do you have some type of way that you're going to be able to limit their access, or is someone going to have to be there 24/7 while the work is going on to kind of oversee things and make sure that everything goes according to plan? There's no right or wrong answer to this question. It's just one of the things that you're going to have to also consider as we're talking about time. Who's going to be there to deal with things like that? Now, another thing that you also have to consider is going to be your timetable and deadlines. So there's going to be some times where you may have a vacation that's coming up in 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, whatever the case may be, and you have a hard deadline that you need to be able to have this project wrapped up by. And if you're going to be working towards a deadline like that, you also have to determine, what things could potentially go wrong and throw the project schedule off. And if it gets thrown off, where does that leave you? Are you still going to be able to meet your deadline? Now, I'm not sure we've mentioned this before. I know you guys probably already know that I'm a general contractor, but I'm also a licensed real estate agent. And sometimes people who are homeowners are preparing to put their homes on the market for whatever reason. They may be moving another place in the city, or they may be moving to a different state. Now, if you're going to be relocating or you're working towards a deadline to have a property listed, you need to kind of make sure that you're going to be able to fulfill or complete that project before you're set to put that property on the market, particularly if you're going to be moving somewhere out of state and you're going to be having to coordinate a lot of additional logistics that you wouldn't normally have to deal with if you were just going to be moving around locally. So you want to make sure that you've got all of your deadlines set and making sure that, you may need to bump out your listing date if you're going to be taking on an extensive bathroom renovation project. Another thing that you also may want to consider is going to be things like business trips. These things can also get in the way, and those deadlines can be quickly approaching as a project begins to wind down, and you may still have outstanding things that need to be completed, and you want to just make sure that you've got enough time and you factored all these things in before you begin. Now, I know this sounds like something that may be relatively rudimentary, but you wouldn't believe the situations that homeowners find themselves in when they decide that they want to move forward and do a bathroom renovation right now. And then once the project is wide open and the bathroom is completely torn apart, they realize that they've got something that's coming up in the very near future, which may prevent the project from actually being able to be completed prior to them having to go ahead and fulfill whatever that obligation is. And things like that can really derail a project, particularly if the project is going to have to completely shut down and have to restart back up once the homeowner returns to town, because a lot of these projects are very, very time sensitive, and particularly when you're going to be working with different trades like your plumbers, electricians, HVAC, your tile folks, countertops, glass installation, etc., etc., etc. Everyone's on their own schedule, and this has to be coordinated on the front end. And so if the project has to completely shut down and basically go away and then has to be restarted at a later date, this is going to make it harder to pull all these people back together and to be able to make everything function and fit back together the way that it did the first time from a scheduling standpoint. And then you may have to essentially kind of piece the schedule back together and get contractors back in as you can, get them back on the schedule to go ahead and wind that project down, which will ultimately take you longer to complete the project than it would have if you'd been able to just kind of start and see it through to the finish and then wrap it up. So as I said before, this is the first in the series of videos where we're going to be talking about bathroom planning. If you enjoyed this video, I've got additional videos here that you can check out on bathroom planning. And as always, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.